Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and get more information and listen to previous shows on our website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information that people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce George Pappas, immigration attorney, for being my guest today. George, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Blaine. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And what you can do, as always, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this.
Thank you.
Give them a big wave. Say hello to everybody. That's
Hi,
George Pappas.
guys. Good to see everybody, as
George,
always.
and I'm really glad you're here today because we kind of lost track, unfortunately, for a couple of years in a good way that you've been attorney for how many years?
23 years. It's 23 years.
Okay.
I've been
And so
practicing law for 23 years, of which two were I was a federal immigration judge in Boston.
how was that being an immigration judge?
Well, it's totally different from being a lawyer. I mean, you have your own courtroom. You're controlling all the parties, the lawyers for the government, the lawyers for the immigrant. We're trying to promote fair hearings and due process. You're basically a very important umpire, trying to make sure that people stick to the issues. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that everybody had a fair hearing and they had their day in court, no matter what the decision is. If we did that, we did our job.
I like how you said that. That's a good analogy, like an umpire, you're the umpire. So did you enjoy doing that?
I really enjoyed it. It was extremely rewarding. It's probably the most rewarding part of my career. Um, I closed over 2,000 cases in 2 years, Blaine. Um, there were many cases I did not grant relief for. I had to order um, many people removed from the United States who did not qualify for asylum. But by the same token, I granted a lot of people asylum in this country who suffered extreme persecution in their countries. Um, every hearing is life or death for these folks. There's no middle ground. There's no room for error. I'll protect their due process and their rights as vigorously as I can. I'll make sure that the attorneys do their job. And if they don't, I call them out on it. Um, but the stories that I've heard over the last 2 years are pretty emotional, what people have suffered in other countries. The average American just has really no idea what kind of persecution, especially women, have suffered in Central and South America and Africa. Um, but I heard their stories, and where they were credible, I granted them asylum, which meant that they had a new life. All of them have been through hell to get here, but they were able to meet the standard of the law. And many times I convinced government attorneys to change their mind where they wanted to appeal my decision. After they heard my decision, they changed their mind and says, Your Honor, we waive appeal. We're not going to appeal. That's a remarkable thing to do, to change a government attorney at the hearing when they're telling you they're going to appeal. And after they hear my decision, they change their mind.
That must have been very exciting for you when that happened.
Yeah, it was very exciting. One of the more exciting things, and I'll try to humanize this for you. Imagine you're a woman. You have been raped, attacked, abused, not only by your partner, the government's not protecting you. You're treated less than a dog from the time you're born until the time you escape and get to the United States. Finally, you're in front of me. I hear your case, and after maybe an hour or two, we decide that you're credible and we're going to grant you asylum. Of course, all of this is through the interpreter. And imagine, Blaine, the interpreter finally tells these young women, We're going to grant you asylum. And all of a sudden, once they hear the translation, the stress just melts off their face. They start to cry, they're sobbing. And then they start to thank me. And I stop. I said, No, don't thank me. Thank the lawyer that's sitting next to you, but also thank the government lawyer, because between the two, Blaine, I'm able to find the truth. And I give them one parting comment to really humanize their future. I look at them as they're in tears, they're sobbing. And I'll say to them, Ma'am, I want you to promise me one thing every day, that you're going to do the following. Listen to me very carefully. Do you have a mirror at home? And they'll say yes. Well, I want you to get in front of that mirror every morning when you get up, and I want you to tell that mirror that you are a beautiful person. Never stop saying that. That has a huge impact on them, Blaine, because we're humanizing them for the first time. They've been treated less than animals all their lives. And to have a man with a black robe on in this courthouse, a figure of authority, reaching down into their world and humanizing them is a very powerful experience, not only for the person that's getting asylum, it's powerful for me because it's my contribution to humanity. And that's what made my job so rewarding, lifting people out of the depths of hell into a place where there was opportunity for them. And so that's why I really valued and enjoyed being a federal immigration judge.
And even before that, you had, I guess, the same kind of reaction from people that you've been an immigration attorney and you're going to go back into that, doing that as well, that you had the same kind of reaction from people. And I've seen it, that you help somebody get to become a citizen in the United States must be very rewarding.
It's the pinnacle of their journey to become a U.S. citizen. It's a proud moment when I can go down to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Office in Charlotte, be with them when they've been granted citizenship, be with them when they go through the ceremony. Um, I couldn't be happier for them. Their life has changed. They're looking forward to becoming part of the American dream. These are the people that bring new vitality, new entrepreneurship into our country. And being able to help them get to that point is very rewarding. The difference between doing it as a lawyer and as a judge is numbers. I had 2,000 cases that I affected in 2 years. You don't do that as a lawyer. That's really hard to do as one single lawyer. So my impact was much greater as a judge. I mean, come on, 2,000 cases, Blaine. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of people. Of course, I also represented, you know, thousands over 20 years as a lawyer. But if I was a judge, the numbers would be much higher. But to get to that volume, you really should have experience as an immigration attorney, to know the law, to know the regulations, and to be an attorney allows you as a judge to empathize with what the attorney is doing on the other side of the table or what they're not doing. I can certainly tell if an attorney hasn't done their job. And that goes for the government attorney too. So the experience of being a lawyer in immigration really paved the ground for me to become, I think, a fair judge. I'll use that word, a fair judge.
So Judge Pappas, George said, Judge, if I can ask you then to kind of give me the Reader's Digest version of then what happened. So here, after being a lawyer for a bunch of years, you finally get to be a judge. Seems to be on paper the ideal job for you. You know, you could, oh, excuse me, other than a bat boy for the Yankees. You know, that would have been the ideal job. But you finally get to be a judge. What happened?
Well, something happened on January the 20th. We had a new president that was inaugurated, Donald J. Trump. And as soon as he was inaugurated, we lost our blue skies and the dark clouds started to emerge nationwide over all the immigration courts. Within hours of the inauguration, the president fired our entire leadership, gone, and within hours. These were people that devoted 10, 20 years of their career within the Department of Justice to running the immigration courts. So we saw an immediate attack on our leadership. Within 2 to 3 weeks after that, the first mass firing of judges occurred nationwide, from my court in Massachusetts all the way to California. Judges have been fired before by new presidents, new administrations, but never to this scale. This is a staggering difference. And that was just the opening gambit, Blaine. By the end of the day, today, we have lost about 130 judges nationwide since January the 20th. About 70 of those judges have been terminated. The president has used Article 2 of the Constitution as his unlimited authority to fire anybody that's in the executive branch. And that's being litigated right now in the courts and in the Supreme Court. The rest of the judges who left were pressured to leave. They took early retirement, or they took the fork in the road that Elon Musk created with Doge. At the end of the day, we lost seasoned, career, experienced judges overnight almost. Today we have less than 600 judges, and the insult to injury to everybody is that now military lawyers
I saw
are
that.
being appointed as judges. Blaine, I can tell you, I was up in Boston last week. These judges know nothing about immigration law. They know nothing about the asylum process. Yet they're judges making life and death decisions for these people. They have no experience. Pam Bondi has gone out with Mr. Hexet and recruiting these military lawyers. And this is really key. These military lawyers have taken an oath to defend the Constitution and to obey their superiors, their commanders. Well, that's a conflict because their primary responsibility as judges is to protect due process and a fair hearing. Yet they took an oath to obey their commanding officer, who may say, I don't want you to do that, or I want you to rule in a certain way. What's the judge to do? They're going to obey their commanding officer, and they're going to undermine due process. They're already undermining it because they have no experience. They're inept. It's going to take them at least a year just to get into a position where they're reasonably competent. And
Now,
so as a result, the immigration landscape has eviscerated the immigration courts. Substantively speaking, the immigration courts, Blaine, are dead. They only exist in name. There is no due process. This is a horror show. The president wanted to bypass the courts and just arrest people, put them in jail, and make them deported, self-deport or push them out. It's become a deportation machine in violation of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, which guarantees due process. These folks, under U.S. law and international law, have a right to be heard if they're asking for asylum, especially. And to be tossed out into jail and to say that you're mandatorily detained, you don't have a right to ask for a bond, is outrageous. The good news is virtually all federal lawsuits challenging these unlawful detentions have been overruled by the federal courts. They have stopped what the president has been trying to do. Out of 125 habeas corpus petitions, 120 have been granted. So these folks have been released, but it means that lawyers have to go to federal court now to force immigration judges to hear a request for a bond. So the deportation machine has really clobbered the immigration courts. The judges that are there, the new ones, are not experienced. The experienced judges that remain are too fearful to say anything. Although you did see in the New York Times recently, a federal judge in Massachusetts resigned to have the opportunity to call out what the president has done for the rule of law. So this is the environment that I came out of. And finally, I was terminated in July 11th. On July 11th, I got my notice. It was not a shock. I knew it was coming, but I stayed at my seat. I stayed in my court to the very end. In fact, I called my court the Chelmsford Titanic.
now, this is, I think you told me also, though, it was being challenged, or is it still being challenged in terms of the process and getting jobs back, or that's not going to happen?
Oh, that's being challenged. It's obviously I'm involved in that challenge. There are other judges that are challenging the unlawfulness of the terminations, but that's going to take a long time for the courts to make a decision on. But we're in that process. We have to exhaust our administrative remedies before we can go into federal court to challenge any unlawful termination. So we're in that process now. Of course, with the shutdown, everything was put on hold, but it's probably going to resume pretty soon. So there's coast to coast. There's about 10 or more of us that are challenging what the president has done. Yeah.
So in the meantime, to your credit, though, rather than wait for that to happen, you also now reestablished law practice. Is that correct?
I have reestablished the law practice. It's the name of my law firm is Pappas Legal, PLLC. And I'll remind everybody, I was required to shut down my 20-year law
I
practice two
remember.
years ago to be a judge. It took me a lot of time and effort to shut it down. And here I am starting from scratch again. Anyway, I've reconstituted the law practice. We're based out of Asheville. I'm handling immigration clients mostly on the East Coast. In fact, I just picked up some clients from California. But I'm proud to say that the office is in downtown Asheville, but the service is nationwide.
Okay, that's kind of new for you too, that you can service anybody. And how is that possible? Is that all via Zoom, or you do, how do you
It's
handle
very
that?
possible. You have to realize that if someone's applying for citizenship or a green card, those applications go to the same, what we call service centers out in Chicago or elsewhere. Since COVID, Zoom has become a great tool for lawyers to consult with clients. There's no prejudice about using Zoom. It works well. If clients have the opportunity to meet us face to face, great. However, if there are what we call individual hearings, I try to always appear in person, whether it's Los Angeles, Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore. I typically go in person. But the technology has brought the market much closer to all attorneys. We can now communicate with people everywhere. Of course, I have a national following. People know me coast to coast because of my outspokenness and because of the number of years that I've been involved. And so the clients are nationwide. Of course, I love my clients right here in North Carolina. We also just opened up an office in the Boston area. That's going to be starting up in a couple of days. Being a judge in New England for 2 years exposed me to a lot of people out there. So I'm glad. I'm also working with another law firm out there, and they're working for me to make sure that we always have somebody on the ground to take care of clients. So distance is no longer an issue. If I can communicate with the client, I can serve them as well as if they were sitting right next to me.
Also, give a shout out. You're also working in this office with somebody else. You have another person.
Yes, I'm proud. Christina Hoke-Raven, who's an attorney with True Ridge out of Hendersonville, is now working with me as of counsel in Asheville. So the two of us are stationed in the Pack Square office. So yes, I have a partner working with me, and I have to say that my better half, Ellen Pappas, is also instrumental in handling the operations of our law firm. It's not just practicing law; you also have to have systems in place to manage the business aspect of the practice, and that's where Ellen comes in. She's got over 2 decades of experience with large law firms, so we've got a good core group right here in Asheville, and I'm proud to say that we're taking off.
And George, if you would talk about the kinds of services you do as an immigration attorney, why does somebody contact you?
Well, if somebody contacts me, they're either calling me because a family member may have been arrested by ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement. And we have to determine whether we can help that person push out and stop deportation. And in many cases, they have a defense, a legal opportunity to stop deportation if they know what their rights are. So I get involved with what we call removal proceedings. And those courts could be in Charlotte, they could be in Atlanta, they could be in New York, they could be in Los Angeles. The family members will call me from anywhere. I mean, they'll find out that I do immigration, they'll contact me, and the client or the person that's been arrested could be 100 miles from here or 2,000 miles from here. So I'm very involved with removal proceedings in immigration court. I'm very involved with immigration bonds. Once somebody's been detained, our goal is to get them out if they have a defense. Obviously, if somebody's committed a crime, they're not going to have a bond. But most of the people that have been arrested, Blaine, have no criminal background. The president says we're going to deport the worst of the worst. Well, they're deporting the best of the best. People that have jobs, they've started companies, they've started businesses, they're raising their kids, they've been here for decades. They contribute to the community, yet the president is rounding them up, and that's really unfortunate. The good news is many of them also have legal options to stop. That's just one thing I do. If somebody wants to apply for citizenship, we can help prepare the paperwork. If somebody wants to petition a spouse for a green card, we can help there. We have many youngsters that are called dreamers that apply for deferred action, childhood arrivals, DACA. That gives them the ability to renew their work authorization. New applications have been on hold for a while, but there's about 550,000 DACA holders nationwide right now, and a lot of them are in North Carolina, and I help them renew their work authorization so they can stay here legally. So those are some of the things we do. But of course, businesses, LeBlanc, are very much involved with immigration. I have a client right now who's applying for extraordinary ability. This person has tremendous talents, has affected his industry, and there are special visas for these talented people that we need and want. So I'm working with them to try to get them a green card. We help employees come from their company, let's say in Europe, to their subsidiary here in the United States. We help transfer those employees here. That helps those US-based companies bring in technology and support so they could keep running the operations in the United States and keep American jobs. So there's a lot of businesses that need our immigration assistance, not just individuals that are picked up by ICE. Immigration is a wide spectrum of opportunities to invigorate the U.S. economy and to promote more jobs and opportunity. One thing I will say, and this is a myth that people constantly hear, what they hear is that immigrants are taking our jobs. This is the most outrageous misconception that you can talk about. Immigrants, absolutely, even the undocumented immigrants, support our economy in ways we don't realize. They contribute $22 billion, Blaine, to Social Security. They don't have a Social Security number, but someone gave them a Social Security number and they're paying into the system. So they're subsidizing us by $22 billion. They don't have access to medical care, notwithstanding what the Republicans say. They're not entitled to any medical insurance except the emergency room. That's it. All the rhetoric you heard about the big, beautiful bill is going to prevent trillions of dollars being spent on illegal immigrants for medical insurance. That's a false statement. But the key is this. These immigrants complement American jobs. Let me give you an example. If you got a restaurant, you got an undocumented person right now washing the dishes, bussing the tables. The Americans don't want that job, Blaine. So what these people do is they allow the waitress to have a job. The waitress allows the restaurant owner to have a business. The business then pays taxes to our economy. That's how you complement Americans. Our harvest, our agricultural sector depends on these immigrants. Americans don't apply for these jobs. So they're not taking away jobs, they're creating jobs for Americans.
Your point is so well taken because, again, you go into any restaurant now, and a lot of restaurants don't have enough employees to stay open, so they're closing, or it really annoys me, George. So many places are closed even on Sundays now. They can't get help, so time you want to go out to eat. So your point is spot on that who are going to do these jobs, and not so easy to find.
American companies are looking for workers. They can't find them in the US market. These immigrants are looking for jobs. It's a match made in heaven. And what's standing in between? Politics. Let me tell you how politics has led to a disaster in our economy. There was a bipartisan bill that was agreed to by the Congress in 2024 to pass comprehensive immigration reform. That bill was going to devote billions of dollars on border enforcement. It was going to provide an opportunity for these immigrants to come in legally for work authorization, not for a green card, not for citizenship. But it was a bipartisan agreement. And one person said, don't do it. Donald J. Trump said, don't pass this bipartisan bill because I need the immigration problem for the election. It's going to galvanize my base. Politics interfered. The MAGA base succumbed to Trump, and we had no immigration reform. So when people say, well, Biden had uncontrolled borders, people flooding in, well, under Biden, there was a bipartisan comprehensive bill ready to go. Donald Trump prevented that from happening. Hence, why we don't have a better system today. I can go on and on, just demystifying all the myths that have cast immigrants in a negative light. They are so essential to our economy. They bring vibrant energy, entrepreneurship, and unlike J.D. Vance, who believes that only a real American is someone that has lineage in this country, under Vance, if you don't have ancestors that go back to the American Civil War or the American Revolution, you're not considered a real American. So if we promote immigration, that's going to threaten the core Americans that Vance promotes. He creates a hierarchy of who is a real American. The real American thus has the privilege of leading this country. Blaine, do you know what that is? This hierarchy is a blueprint for fascism. That's what it is. And we have the vice president of the United States promoting this. This is pretty sad. This is really dangerous.
Well, George, one of the interesting things about you and what's happened in your life is the fact that you've now also become kind of a spokesperson, and I give you a lot of credit for this, for speaking out about these issues. And if you would just talk a little bit about the fact that aside from being on the Blaine's World show, which is up there, you've been also on just a few other shows lately. Is that correct?
Well, since July, I've been on CBS Evening News. Christine Amanpour has had us on her show. NPR has had countless interviews with me and articles covering the immigration crisis. NPR in Boston, NPR National. Boston Globe had a front page article with me talking about these issues. So I've had the privilege an opportunity to reach a national audience, actually an international audience. We've had the Japanese news wires speaking to me. We've had the French paper Libertaire also interview us on these immigration issues. So even the international press has listened to the messages and comments that I've made, together with some of my other colleagues. So we have been fortunate that we have been able to protect the due process narrative that's been attacked in the press on a national and international scale.
And lest you forget, most importantly, you've been on the Blaine's World show. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
how you
Blaine, I'm
welcome
telling
now.
you,
But
your
George,
reach is
if
beyond measure.
I can have you toot your own horn for one other thing you make available to people is that if somebody wants to speak on this issue or talk about immigration issues, you're willing to do that?
Yes, I was just up in Boston last weekend speaking in front of a couple of hundred people. I am more than happy to speak to any audience that wants to hear about the inside scoop of how judges and courts have been assaulted. I can give them a perspective that they don't hear about all the time. And it's not every day you have a judge coming out and explaining what the threat is, because as I've said many times, no one is safe. This is not just an immigration issue. Our civil liberties as Americans is being attacked. Other institutions are being attacked. It's not just immigration courts. So there's a crisis here of civil liberties, our freedom, our democracy. And unfortunately, the pain of that assault is being felt as we speak, whether it's the rising cost of healthcare, where millions will lose healthcare, whether food has been used as a hostage to settle political points, and of course the attack on firing, FBI agents, firing State Department officials, closing down U.S. aid, closing down the Consumer Protection Board. Hundreds have been fired from the Department of Justice, career attorneys that have protected our civil liberties. Our Civil Rights Division out of the Department of Justice dismantled. So what I want to say here, Blaine, in short, is that no one is safe under this current environment, and that's why I'm speaking out.
So if people want to find you, George, either to have you as a speaker or to represent them, what's the best bet to track you down?
Best bet is go to my website. It's an easy place to connect with me. The web address is pathways-immigrations.com. Pathways-immigrations.com is my website. Or they can email me at, actually, they can even call my office directly, area code 828-903-8987, nationwide. 828-903-8987.
Okay.
They'll be connected to my office, and they can connect with me.
And once again, the website was, if you would.
Pathways-immigrations, plural.com.
Okay. And George, thank you for being my guest on this edition of the Blaine's World webcast. Ursula, thank you for all the great work you're doing and helping out people you always do. And I also like to thank my producer, Cappy Cassetti, and hopefully we'll get together again soon for lunch, my friend. What do you think?
Absolutely. As always, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to your followers, and to Cappy Tassetti. Thank you for her help in setting up the Zoom conference. And as always, Blaine, thank you very much for having me. Great time.
Thanks, buddy.